Date with a Debut is recorded and produced on Awabakal Country, and I pay my respects to all elders past and present and extend that to any First Nations people tuning in. Always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On with the show.
It taught me a lot about patience, and then when I was writing with obviously real people and real history, I felt it needed to have a lot of authenticity. And so I wrote about things that I had actually witnessed myself.
Welcome to Date with a Debut, a podcast about debut authors, their incredible books, and their journey to publication. If you're looking for a new author to discover or writing inspiration for your own story and you don't know where to start, this is the place to be. I'm Nick Wasiliev, host of the show, and I'm delighted to welcome another debut author in today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, jump online and give us a thumbs up, a 5-star review. It really helps the show out. If you also want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds, or you can subscribe to Date with a Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Wherever you are listening, thank you for listening to us and supporting the Australian book industry. You can also find any books mentioned in today's podcast down in the description. Today, I'm joined by Nick Croydon. In addition to being the CEO of QBD Books Australia, he has had more than 25 years' experience running international publishing companies and book retail businesses across the United Kingdom and Australia. But we're here today to talk about his debut speculative fiction novel, The Turing Protocol, published by Affirm Press, which you can get a copy of down in the description. We will discuss some mild spoilers, so I recommend you grab a copy now. I started off by asking Nick about what books mean to him after 25 years in the world of publishing and how this has led him to pick up the writer's pen himself. Nick, welcome to Date with a Debut.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it's nice to have another Nick on the show, two Nicks together. And I'll start off by saying, even before we get into talking about your book, The Turing Protocol, you've had an immense career. I was just saying, you've done plenty of other books. I believe you've done a couple of children's books as well, separate to this. You've done 25 years in publishing, CEO of QBD Books Australia. At the risk of hitting you with a softball opener, what do books mean to you? What do books mean to Nick Croydon, the person, the individual?
Yeah, so I was introduced to books as a toddler, and went on to study history and mathematics. Went completely in the wrong direction into accountancy, and didn't enjoy that too much. And then eventually found myself back, 25, probably 30 years ago now, into a book business. And that was clearly where my heart belonged, because I've been in it ever since. So, to say books are my life is probably an understatement. I have published a lot of books. I've been a retailer in the UK and now in Australia. I wrote some children's books. I have lots of authors as friends. We read books every day of our lives.
Sounds awful. Poor us. I know we have to read books for a living. I know. Oh God. But it is great that I kind of have someone here like you on the show, because it's a kind of a unique opportunity to ask this particular question, because obviously, books are fantastic. They're a great tool for education. They're a great avenue of escapism. And I find that, from my interactions with readers and writers themselves, not being on this podcast, people are often turning to books for that reason more than ever. Even though the world seems to be an ever-changing beast, we seem to be living in the online space. It seems increasingly more tumultuous every time you go online as to the status of the world. Out of curiosity, as someone who's been in this industry for this quarter of a century, where do you think the industry is going, and where do you think the book industry sits right now?
Yeah, so people have been telling me the book is dead, for as long as I've been in books. Thankfully, I think books are a very resilient product. They're a much loved product, but there's no denying that it's a product under attack. just in time. The amount of streaming stations now, especially in the younger generation. 30 years ago, you just had to compete with a TV show. Now you've got to compete with all the online gaming, all the streaming channels. So, our job kind of at QBD is to make books, physical books, paper books, as accessible as we can to as many people as we can, because we want the next generation of readers. We wouldn't survive if we didn't have more younger people coming in, and thankfully, they are. I mean, the current surge of a demand for romance and fantasy, is bringing in a wide audience. It's probably skewed a little female, but that's great. We probably need a bit more for younger boys. They tend to give up about in their teenage years as they get tempted online, and their concentration goes another way. So I think we're constantly in that battle of creating exciting stories to increase readership from all generations.
It certainly is an experience I had when I was a teenager. I kind of fell out with reading on several occasions, just through getting distracted by video games that were skewed towards me, or television that was skewed towards me, or sporting activities. It is, you're very right in regards to the commerce of distraction and kind of attention, so to speak, which is the world where books live in. But I mean, there's this thing called book talk, which I think you kind of allude to in terms of the growth of romance and stuff, which I've never seen it grow. It's become it's like a reinvention of the online, book recommend. It's like book recommendations from a library, or book recommendations from anywhere. It's kind of the 21st century version of it, which always gives me hope whenever I think about book discourse and where books have a future. And I think there's nothing beats that physical touch of a book.
I agree, and I think there is hope. I was reading a survey recently saying 50% of Australians want to read more, right? So the desire is there. They just have this constant battle between work and life and kids and shows, and our lives just seem to get endlessly busier. Our phones are stuck to our hands, but there's still the desire. So I think we've just got to see if we can release something and tempt those people to purchase a book. And they will thank us for it. It's so much better for people. You talk about the paper version. Again, there's so much research saying that if you read a physical book in bed, your blood pressure lowers, your heart rate relaxes. It's a healthy thing to do. It's very good for your mind. I think there's something like 25% of improvement in your cognitive brain if you're a reader. You'll be more successful if you're a reader. So there's plenty of great things that happen to you if you become a reader and stay as a reader. I think it will almost be like the opposite of a cigarette packet. It'll be, this will extend your life. You stick one of those on the back.
I've constantly heard that it is increasingly viewed as a great way to to fight off like dementia. It's a great way to retain knowledge, to retain information, keep your brain exercised as well, which is amazing. Which pivots quite nicely onto the fact that you have this book out in the world. Obviously, it's your first. You have, obviously, I mentioned at the top, done children's books before, but this is your first historical speculative fiction debut. At the risk of being a little bit cheeky, because you have been on the other side of this world with helping get many, many books out there. What was it like to be flipped, be in the editorial process, have your baby critiqued and examined and put together with Affirm Press? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so quite daunting and confronting. I've been used to buying the books. So as I'm sure you're aware, when your debut, it took me over 2 years to put this book together. And then, when you think you've finished it and done your first self-edit, and you're ready to either show it to your agent, that's quite a moment, because up until that point, only you know whether you think it's any good or not. And then you pass it on to someone else to judge 2 years of work. So as you can imagine, that's quite a scary moment. Thankfully for me, the agent liked it. I put it out to three publishers. All three publishers made an offer. And I went with Affirm / Simon & Schuster in the end. And they picked up not only Australian and New Zealand rights, they picked up the UK. And then about a month ago or so, HarperCollins picked it up for Canada and USA.
Let's talk about it. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's talk about the Turing Protocol. For everyone online on YouTube on the video side of this, I'm got the cover up on the screen now, and now is a great opportunity for us to talk about this. We were just talking about it beforehand, but you've literally just come back from tour, so I'm your kind of last commitment for the week. So now this is the part of the show where I like to ask authors to give me the classic 1-minute elevator pitch. So I'm in the lift, I'm going up with you, you've hopped in. What is the Turing Protocol about?
The Turing Protocol is about Alan Turing, the Enigma codebreaker, who creates a machine that can send a Morse code message back in time for a short period, 8 weeks only, to himself. And history diverts from where we think it is, and the current guardian of the machine has to put history back on the right course. And then following him, we go through 80 years of history. So going through, the big events of that time, the Cold War, 9/11, COVID, the Ukraine war currently happening, with new guardians as time moves on, having the same issue.
Nailed it. Ding! Arrived at the floor. We've arrived at the Turing Protocol floor. And I do love some of the quotes off the top of this cover, which we can actually see here if you're seeing it online. Chris Hammer's quote of "The time machine meets the Da Vinci Code," I think nails it.
That's pretty good. Thanks, Chris.
I love the examination of moral challenges that comes with time travel, and Turing Protocol really it's a very big deep dive into that. And so, for context, we're talking about real figures in history here. So, as a small, we'll kind of stay as general spoiler free as possible, but there are a few small little bits in here that you can find out in terms of history. Alan Turing, a key figure in the history of World War II, cracking the Enigma machine. And he did propose to his colleague, Joan Clark, who was a fellow mathematician, despite his sexual orientation, despite being gay. And in real life, they didn't go through with the engagement for very obvious reasons. But you present us with a really interesting what-if scenario that Turing creates this machine, a separate machine called Nautilus, that can send a message back through to the recent past. And he realizes the power of this when he kind of uses it to assist the Allied forces on D-Day. It's such a broad question to open with, but tell me about pulling from history to create a really interesting what-if scenario.
Yeah, so obviously, like reading, I've been studying history since I was 6, and I've been to Bletchley Park many times, and I've studied Turing. He was such a genius. I mean, not just a great mathematician. He was on the level of Da Vinci and Newton, the Einstein, the greats. And it's a sad loss to the world, from his departure from it. And I kind of just wanted to celebrate just what a genius he was, but also the struggle he had in 1940s, 1950s society, being a gay man, right? So that was not good for him. And I think I had to deal with that. And when you're dealing with real people, right, you have to get a lot of your research done. So I did about 8 months of research. I even met with his descendants, his family in London, and we had some interesting conversations, mainly about his death and whether it was suicide or not. And they agreed there was it was a grey issue. Right? There was a debate about that. But then I have other characters in here, like Churchill, right? And again, you have to do your research, and even to the extent of I had to ring the Savoy Hotel to make sure I named the ballroom the correct name, because it's different in 2023 than it was in 1945. So, and as you know, once you go out there with your book, there's plenty of people wanting to knock you down. So you kind of got to get your research done. But I just loved the as a fiction writer, and this is purely speculative fiction. I make that point quite strongly. That having this 8-week window creates a lot of pace in the book, and I think that's and for me, when I'm a reader, I love pace to go along with the plot, and having that time, 2 different timelines running keeps, I think, the audience second guessing. And someone said to me, like, I had to keep looking things up on Google to see whether you were at that point telling me the truth or not, right? And I thought, well, that's great. That's kind of the aim, is that you've educated yourself and you've found something out in an entertaining way. So it was a good dynamic to use.
Yeah, it is a great dynamic, because obviously we've got Annabelle kind of on one side, and then obviously the kind of that historical context and background around it, which kind of dovetails into the story. Really interesting. Out of curiosity, now that you've told me about the fact that Turing's descendants have, you spoke to them about it, have they read the book? Did they give you kind of
They said they didn't want to read the book until I was back in London with them. So I'm actually going to be calling them shortly, because the UK book is coming out. Edition is coming out at the end of August. So they're going to read it then when it's in London, and then we'll see what they say.
Well, I will say that off the back of that, like the thing that sticks out to me, I was trying to I always like looking for themes and things to grab onto about, like, I like the buttons, the things that we're trying to delve into here. And there was a great quote that came in from a reviewer, which was kind of, what if the future could rewrite the past? And I'm in my headspace is, would you use it? Weirdly enough, this book came along at an interesting time for me, because I had just gotten my hands on the book American Prometheus, which is a biography of Oppenheimer. And off the back of watching Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer and talking about the moral ramifications that comes out of that story, the chain reaction of events after creating a massive weapon, being the atomic bomb, and all of the discussion and focus on, you're so focused on whether it could be created. They didn't stop to think if they should have created it, or all the additional responsibilities that come off the top of that after you create this particular device. But there's also another element that comes down to some of the moral decisions that Turing dealt with in his real life. I mean, the whole situation with Enigma is that they couldn't reveal that they cracked the code, which meant that there were lots and lots and lots of events that had to happen, which meant that there were countless innocent lives lost that could have been avoided had they not cracked. So I think it's time travel. It comes with so many moral ramifications, which makes it ideal for fiction stories, which is no wonder you've kind of dived into it. Tell me about examining the moral responsibility that kind of comes with time travel on top of all of the other stuff that the Turing was dealing with at that time.
Yeah, so I think you allude to something very important, which is, it's kind of like godlike power. What is it like to have godlike power? and that could be Alan Turing at the time with Enigma, and as you say, and we even saw in the film adaptation, he had to decide. He had to make the decision to let convoys get attacked, right? With hundreds of young sailors, on board. That must have been horrendous, right? But he's a mathematician, so he would have weighed up the ramifications and said, I've got the greater good. I'm going to save more lives by letting that convoy sink, than if I saved everybody for the next 2 weeks and the Germans twigged to the fact that he'd broken the code. So, you extend that to the next, big event, which is, as you say, Oppenheimer's bomb. I'm sure he started that as a quite excited physicist, exploring science. But eventually, he knew what he was building. He knew that it was going to be extremely destructive. And then, as you alluded to again, after the event, and he saw the horrors of what he had caused, that weighed heavily on his heart and his soul. Right? And then you can come to the modern day, and we entrust the world to 20 or 30 leaders that have the power to drop immense bombs and send troops and aircraft carriers and create havoc. They have that moral dilemma too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is another great thing that you do here, which is examine that moral complexity, and that is through the Turing family, these characters here, because the responsibility is, of Nautilus has not been set with a government. It has not been set with a particular leader. It has been passed down through family. We have Annabelle, one of Alan's descendants. There's a great extract for anyone who is interested in checking out the book on Good Reading that you can go and check out, which is the moment where just before her father actually provides her with this amazing secret. But then again, you've also got Alan himself, as well as Joan, amongst other characters that you've kind of alluded to. Talk to me about the family dynamic of this, but also how these characters and this family judge, with come and grapple and judge and work with such a unique, massive responsibility that the power that this device holds. Because I think this is the real crux of the drama in this story, because it's all focused around this family and the responsibility that has been bestowed upon them through this invention.
Yeah, and I think what comes out of the book is that none of them wanted it. Right? So whenever Nautilus was passed from one generation to another, first of all, it was complete disbelief, right? That they were talking nonsense, right? It would be impossible, And then when they began to believe it, they didn't want the power, right? They didn't want to be the guardian, but then they realized what the earlier generation had done with it, and the benefit to mankind. So this struggle between not wanting responsibility, but realizing that if they didn't take it, either it had to be destroyed and lose the opportunity to save the world in the future, or God forbid it goes into the hands of a government. So they eventually do that, and I think the other important stream that goes along with it is, there's also quite a love story going on in the book, but and that can be husband and wife, but there's also father and daughter, between David and Annabelle, even daughter and children, right? In the case of Annabelle, so there's the little family values going on, but then secretly owning a machine that can change history.
Just casually throwing that in there as well, on top of the normal family complexities. Tell me a little bit more about Annabelle, because I mean we've touched on kind of the Alan and Joan a little bit, but and kind of that background. But Annabelle, I think, is the one of the real cruxes and hearts of this book. She because she's kind of very much like the reader. She's getting introduced to this concept for the first time. She's a very capable, accomplished. She has but obviously, of course, this This throws her off considerably, because it is suddenly being bestowed a significant amount of power, but also by extension a humongous amount of responsibility on a global scale. Is something that really affects her quite considerably. Of course, no spoilers over the course of the book. But tell me about Annabelle.
Yeah, so Annabelle, I think is probably the biggest character in the book, right? And were there to be a second book, I think she would continue into that book too. And I wanted to write a kind of a modern, successful woman, right? So who went through normal things like university and rebellion, and then she eventually got married and had children. The struggles that all that brings with family, giving up her, she was a scientist, and she kind of had to give up her career for a while, and then going back into work. So all the things that modern women have to deal with. But then to make it a little bit more exciting, I wanted to add in politics, right? And so I made the character, apply to become a sort of junior politician in the UK, but because of her background and her drive and her success, of course you're going to expect her to rise through the ranks, which she does. And so then you have family. Her husband Edward is a lawyer. Two busy parents. These are quite normal things that happen to everybody, right? But with the additional political control, and then finding out who her grandfather was, in the book, and being then given the responsibility from her father of the guardianship of Nautilus and what it could do. Right? Very daunting for a youngish woman with a family. And then going through the decisions that she had to make, and quite the handing over process is quite fraught with anger and disbelief, and not wanting the responsibility, and then acceptance. So there are quite a lot of emotions going through, which I think good for the pace of the book.
Absolutely, and it shows and highlights how much it lends weight to the power of this machine and the responsibility that comes with it. We will not go into spoilers, because I feel like that would be a disservice to any readers. So for all readers who are interested in this book, absolutely check it out. But before we say farewell to the Turing Protocol, I do want to ask. I often there's the generic question of what do you want readers to get out of it, and I usually say, well, to readers, go read it yourself. Go check it out. We are just writers. We cannot control what you get out of it. It is completely up to you. So instead, I kind of want to ask, what did the Turing Protocol teach you? Teach Nick the writer, or Nick the individual? What was the process of making this book? What did it teach you?
Yeah. So obviously it's a debut. It's my first time I've done it. It taught me a lot about patience. I run quite a dynamic business, and things happen quite fast. In writing, it doesn't. The editorial process is gruesome. Your lovely words are thrown onto the cutting floor.
That's a great way to describe it. It's a great way to describe it. So a bit of patience, a bit of humility, and then I think ultimately, when I was writing with obviously real people and real history, I felt it needed to have a lot of authenticity. Right? So I wrote about things that I had actually witnessed myself. So without giving too much away, all the venues in the book I've either lived in or visited many times. Right? The institution that houses Nautilus, shall we say, it's on the front cover. I worked at. All the things I say about that place are true. So I think that lens, when you're using actual truth and reality, then mixed in with an awful lot of fiction and made-upness,
it blends quite well. And I think I learned to make sure that the research was not minimal. It was checked and rechecked and checked again.
I'm not surprised to hear that patience and humility and all of that kind of came out of this, because I think there are a few things that can humble a writer more than a blank page.
That's right. That's right.
Because then you've got to put yourself to task and produce it. Yeah, it's the eternal truth that we always struggle with, but it is how it is. Now I can ask the question, what's next? I know that you teased a little bit that there might be a potential second story with Annabelle. At the risk of being a bit cheeky, will we see more?
Yeah, I've actually just finished the first draft of a second manuscript, which will feature Annabelle. And I've just gone into the editorial process as we speak. So hopefully next year we will see book 2.
To finish off, before we wrap up for good, I like to finish with a rapid fire question part of the show, where I basically fling a bunch of questions at you and you give me the first answer that comes to your head. Are you ready, Nick?
Okay, ready.
All right. First and foremost, of course, being someone who is a CEO of QBD Books, I'm assuming you like to read a lot off the back of that. So, first question, what is your favorite book that you have read in the last 12 months?
In the last 12 months? I haven't read a lot of books in the last 12 months because I've been writing a lot, but I've read one recently. I read one recently. I think it's Sam Guthrie, The Peak. And because it was based in Hong Kong, and I had lived in Hong Kong for over a year, I really enjoyed it because every place, authenticity, every place he described, I knew. And it was just very exciting to be an armchair traveler back to Hong Kong without getting on a Qantas flight. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Sam.
That's a great answer. I love that. The Peak. So out of curiosity, what is your favorite debut in the theme of debut novels and debut themes in this podcast? What's your favorite debut novel that you have ever read? Is there a favorite debut you've ever read?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I guess every first series would have been a debut. I guess I'll probably answer a different question. When I was 19, I read a Laurie Lee book called "As I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning," which described a 19-year-old boy's journey through London into Spain, and that started my love affair with Spain. And then the second book that I would highlight would be Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse 5. That probably shaped my teenage years.
Yes, that's a great one. I don't think we've had Slaughterhouse 5 appear in this question. So
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure it wasn't a debut. I'm not sure if it's his first or second, but it'll be up there.
It'll go. It's going in regardless. So yeah. It's one of those. Do you have a favorite word?
Do I have tolerance?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a great word. A lot. Is any particular reason, or is it just the way it sounds, or what it signifies?
I think it's what it signifies. I think there's a lot of cruel voices in the universe, and I think people need to be a bit more tolerant of each other.
We were just talking about it a little bit beforehand, before we started recording, that you've just come back from tour. You've been traveling all around. What's one surprise that you found from being on tour?
Yeah, so I was kind of expecting that because you went past publication date, that you'd see you expect to see your book everywhere where books are sold. Right, so you travel through the airport. Surely it will be on the pick of the month stand for for the airport shops, you'd expect to sit in the DDSs and every QBD, blah blah blah. So, but it obviously takes time. And so my advice for all debut authors is don't go on the first week of post publication. Leave it a week and give them time to get the physical books out. Otherwise, you're just going to disappoint yourself. So yeah, on the way back from tour, it was great because then they had achieved that, and you see your life's work displayed all over the place, and that's lovely. But yeah, so that was a bit of a surprise for me.
Oh, love it. If you were suddenly given the power to use Nautilus, would you?
I don't think I'd be able to resist.
That was I thought you were about to say I don't think I'll be able to, and then you just flipped it right at the end. So off the back of it, obviously because this is a historical fiction, we travel back in time to World War II. If you could travel back in time, where would you go?
Where or when?
Where or when? Okay. Where would you go? Actually, we can do that. Where would you go?
I'd probably go back to the early 1900s and try and prevent World War I, which led into World War II.
So you'd be there to save Franz Ferdinand?
Yeah, maybe go to Sarajevo and get that black hand gown before they got him. Have a little chat with the Kaiser. You get into a lift and your absolute hero is in there. Who is it? David Bowie.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's a one. That is a great answer. Now I need to ask, you're going up to a floor. You've got time for one question to ask David Bowie. What would you ask him? Or would you just give him a hug? Because I would.
Yeah. God, I would say, would you please come for dinner? Then I could ask him more questions.
So yeah.
Then I can ask him more questions.
Yeah, smart. I would be asking him what floor are you going to, so I can just follow you around. That's what I would be.
Yeah.
And then finally, last question: are you happy?
I'm happy with the book. I'm happy with the way it's selling. And someone asked me what will be my sort of moment, and I thought my moment will be when I'm sat on a plane and someone next to me is reading my book. And I look over and I thought, that will be the moment. That will be success.
Wait until you discover it on, as I've told this story a couple of times, but when I was on my honeymoon in Fiji about 2 or 3 years ago, I'd just done an interview with Naima Brown on her book, The Shot, her debut. And, I took the book with me on holiday. Because I was like, I want to reread it again. Because, when you're doing the show, you got to skim read the book as quickly as you can to get your points and everything across. And so I get to an island in the middle of Fiji called Tokariki. And I'm ready to just read this book by the pool. And so I go there and I notice there's a tiny little library there. And I go look in the library and there is a copy of The Shot that's obviously had a well-traveled journey to get there. It's been well marked. Yeah. It's been read by many hands. And so I just took a photo of my book and her book and just said,
fantastic.
So one day, if you find yourself in that situation, that'll be the moment where I go, yep, we've made it. We finally made it.
Exactly.
Nick, thank you so much. It's been really nice having you on Date with the Debut. For everyone listening, the Turing Protocol is published by Affirm Press. It's out now in all book retailers, all online. It's also available in libraries if you want to go and check it out in libraries as well. Be sure to get a copy in the description. Thank you so much, Nick. It's been an absolute privilege having you on the show.
Thank you very much, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Date with a Debut and for listening to the Words and Nerds channel. You can buy all books mentioned in today's episode down in the description box, and if you enjoyed the show, drop us a review, leave us 5 stars or a thumbs up. It really helps the show out. If you want to hear episodes when they drop, be sure to subscribe to Words and Nerds or you can subscribe to Date with the Debut on Podbean to hear the latest episodes as they drop. Want to support the show more? You can also subscribe to my Patreon in the description to get early access to episodes, book reviews, recommendations, and a whole lot more. Catch you soon! Date with the Debut is a Words and Nerds and Breathe Art podcast co-production.